Okay, here's warm-up 9.5, going to graph this cosine function. All right, but first I gotta collect some info. So first thing I'm noticing here is that I have a reflection. So I'm gonna be reflecting this cosine curve over the theta axis. So usually a cosine curve would look something sort of like a valley, but this is gonna look like a hill instead. It's going to be upside down from the parent graph for cosine. So it's going to look something like that, okay? All right, then the amplitude is this coefficient. The amplitude is always positive, so even though there's a negative in front of the two, amplitude is positive because it's referring to a distance, okay? The period is going to come from this coefficient, but it's not going to be pi over 4. So this is the k value. But period for sine or cosine is going to be 2 pi over k. So it's going to be 2 pi over whatever this coefficient is. In this case, 2 pi over 4. Okay, I'm going to rewrite that as division, like so that I can rewrite it as multiplication by flipping the second fraction. So 2 pi times 4 over pi. When I multiply this together, I'm going to get 8 pi over pi. Okay, and then the pi's are going to cancel. So that's just going to equal 8. So my period is going to be 8. Okay, vertical shift is going to come from whatever is added or subtracted to the end. So my vertical shift here is going to be 1. That's going to move everything up 1. So I'm going to write up 1, but you could just write 1 as long as you know that's what it means, okay? And then the phase shift is when we're moving things horizontally. I'm not sure why it's not just called horizontal shift, but we call it phase shift for trig functions. And that's going to come from this part, okay? So my phase shift is going to come from whatever's inside the parentheses there. So what I'm going to do is take the contents of the parentheses and set it equal to 0. And then I'm going to solve for theta, so I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides here. So my phase shift is going to be negative 4. You could write it like that, or that means we're going to move to the left 4. Okay, left 4 units. Okay, so let's start graphing a cycle here. What I like to do is very lightly draw what I call the ghost. First, well, let me start with, I'm going to make what I call a roadmap to get some guidelines for my critical points. So I'm going to start with the vertical shift. So my midline is going to be up 1. So I've got a horizontal line here. That's going to be the middle of my curve, okay? And then I'm going to use the amplitude. I'm going to go up and down 2 units from the midline. Okay, so here is my road map. Looks like a road, right? And all the critical points are going to be on those 3 lines. Okay, so now I'm going to just kind of pretend that there's no phase shift. So I'm going to well, what would happen if we didn't have a phase shift? If I just have theta in here and there's no plus 4? Well, I'd have this kind of a shape. So I'm doing this lightly because this is not my final. This is going to be what I call the ghost. So it's going to follow that kind of a format. So hopefully this is going to show up. Okay, so very lightly here. I've got this in a blue colored pencil. That's what it would look like with no phase shift, okay? So before I get to actually doing the phase shift, what I would need to do is scale the theta axis. The y-axis each tick is just going to be 1 unit always for me. But the theta axis we definitely need to scale, because I'm going to be moving things left 4, but my ticks aren't necessarily worth 1 unit here. I got to make sure I know what they're worth. So that's where I'm going to use the period. So the period is the length of 1 cycle. So I've got 1 cycle drawn here. So that means this 4th tick out where this curve ends is going to be at 8, right? Because then this is a distance of 8 from the number line, okay? Now that I've got that 4th tick, I can figure out what the rest of these ticks are. So halfway to the 4th tick would be the 2nd tick. So halfway to 8 is 4. This is going to be 4 then, okay? And then the first tick is halfway to the second one, so that's going to be 2. And now I know each tick is worth 2, okay? And I could keep labeling this all the way across if I want to. You don't necessarily need to label every single place, but you want at least one tick so that we know what our scale is. Okay, now we're going to go left 4 units, but it's not 4 ticks, it's 4 units. So that means on this graph, 4 units is 2 ticks. So I'm going to move this point 2 ticks to the left because that's actually moving it 4 units if you look down here. Okay, so this point is going to end up right here. Okay, and I can move all 5 of my critical points like that, but I'm just going to do the pattern starting from here instead of starting from there. So I'm going to make my curve, go to the midline, then to the top, back to the midline, and to the bottom. And then I can draw in my actual curve. Okay, so you don't necessarily need the road map and the ghost drawn, but I think it's a nice way to kind of see what's happening first to make sure you get your critical points in the right place, and then to see this is shifted to the left. Okay, and then you'd always, for my class, I'd always want in your final answer to make sure that you have the places labeled where your cycle starts and ends. So I've got -4 and 4 labeled there. That way when I look at your work I can tell that you moved it the right amount, and then you know what the period is and all that. Okay? All right. And now let's find the coordinates of these critical points. So hey, this bottom line here is at -1. This would be at +1 for the midline, and the top line is at +3. So now I can find the coordinates of these critical points. Let me label them A, B, C, D, and E, just for reference. Okay, and then point A, let's see, point A was 2 units, 2 ticks to the left, 1 down, but 2 ticks is -4, so -4, -1. Okay. Point B was going to be 2 to the left and 1 up. Again, that's 1 tick, but remember each tick going left and right is 2 units. Okay. C is on the y-axis, so 0 to the right, 3 up. 0, 3. Point D is going to be 2 to the right, 1 up. And E, the last point here, that's 4 to the right, 1 down. Okay, and there are the coordinates of those points. Okay, that's the warm-up, and I'll see you next time.